elements of parallel computing, right? In this, we have discussed about what are the different architectures we have with respect to parallel systems and models. In this one, we have discussed about two notions called data parallelism, task parallelism. Data parallelism, in one sentence, what we can say is same operation will be performed on different subsets of the same data. Okay, some data will be there. We have considered like 100 records we are having. Out of those 10 records by 10 records separately we will process 20 records, 30, like that. We are having subsets. On those all subsets, we will be performing same operation. Such kind of parallelism we will be calling as data parallelism, whereas a task parallelism is nothing but same or different data. Like 100 set we are having, 100 records we are having, 200 records we are having, another one. But we will be performing different operations simultaneously. Such kind of parallelism we call it as task parallelism. Okay, the data can be of belongs to the same data chunk or different data chunks. Next, synchronous computation is synchronous we have seen. You have asked about one thing called speed up, right? Speed up is more in data parallelism, less in task parallelism we have seen. But according to the discussion, we were not convinced with that point. The thing is here, we have to consider like how many threads will be created to read the data. It's like for one particular, all these operations, same operations will be performed parallelly, of course, on different subsets of the same data. As we are having for the same data, only one thread will be created for accessing the data. Whatever the data we are having, 100 records, for all those 100 records, one thread will be there. Of course, as this is a synchronous computation, at a time only one one process will access the data. So one process will access in the sense one thread is enough to access the data. Only one thread need to be created. One thread needs to be created. That's why the speed up will be more in data parallelism. Consider coming to this task parallelism. Here, every process will create its own thread. Why? Because task parallelism can be performed on different data sets. Okay, different operation, of course, that is other thing, but here different data can also be present. So for every data set, we can say one thread will be created. So more threads we have to create, automatically speed up will be reduced. In that particular aspect only, the speed up is compared. Understand my point? Here now you can read this. Speed up is, yeah. See here, one data we are having. Let us say, yeah, we have considered one example, right? That water tank, overhead tank will be having there. From there we have to get water. We have to collect water. Okay, that is data. Data is nothing but water. Now, if you deploy one particular person who will be able to who can able to give the water from the tank, okay, that is nothing but accessing the data. For accessing the data, we are deploying one person. That is nothing but one thread. Whereas a task parallelism, there exist multiple tanks, isn't it? Yes or no? Multiple tanks. That is nothing but different data. So multiple tanks, if we have multiple threads, multiple persons, we have to deploy to access the data. Understand?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Got it.
Yeah. Now different threads we have to create for each process. So automatically the speed up will be reduced in task parallelism. Whereas in data parallelism, speed up is more, as there is only one thread need to be created. Got it? That is data parallelism and task parallelism. This point I didn't covered in the previous class. Okay. Of course, these things we have seen clearly. And coming to the models, in this particular one, Flynn classification, we have seen single instruction, single data, single instruction, multiple data, multiple instruction stream, single data stream, and multiple instruction stream, multiple data stream. Can anyone able to tell what is instruction stream? What is meant by instruction stream? Yes. What is instruction stream? What is data stream? Data stream is nothing but whatever the connection we have from memory to the processor. That is called data stream. Okay. Instruction stream is nothing but connection from IO device. From IO device, we'll be having we'll be receiving the instructions. Okay, from IO unit, we can say. From there, we will be having the connection to the processor. What processor will do? It will take the instruction from instruction stream in what you call IO unit. Next, data from memory, and it will execute that instruction. That is what the processor will do. So depending upon the number of instructions that we will be receiving at the same time, and the number of data streams that we are having, we can classify into these 4 types of architectures: SIMD, SASD, MISD, MIMD, like this. Okay, this is about Flynn's classification. I think you are having this one in other subject as well, computer architecture or computer organization. Yeah. So now coming to this today's one, that is elements of distributed computing. Earlier in the previous class, what we discussed, elements of parallel computing. Okay. Now here also we'll be discussing what are the different architectures, like how the distributed computing models we can establish, and what are the logical architectures for these kind of what are the different architectures that we have for this particular one. We'll be seeing. Yeah. In this, first we'll be seeing about a well-known thing called message passing paradigm. Here in this diagram, you see there are process 1, process 2. Process 1 and process 2 are being communicated by exchanging the messages. Like message 1 will be sent by process 1. Then after receiving, it will respond, and that process 2 will respond by sending the message to, again it can ask for something, again process 2 can send. Like this, two processes will be communicated by exchanging the messages. Okay, the base this is the basic approach that we are having. Still people are joining by asking. Okay. Here, inter-process communication, how it will be performed in this particular one, by exchanging the messages. Okay, there will be two process, sender and receiver. Once the sender sends the message, after getting the message, receiver will respond to it. Okay, this is about message passing paradigm. Okay, this is well-known thing. I don't think much explanation required for it. Next, client server. This is quite interesting. You try to understand here. Client server. I think these terms, you know, client and server. Here, client request for the resource or some sort of processing power, some sort of data to the server. Then server will respond to it. This is client server architecture. And now how this this one will be initiated is, or we can say, what are the vertical roles of client system and server system. Like until one particular request received by the server has to wait. Yes or no? Try to understand my point. Until server gets one request from any of the clients, server will not be having any work to do. Yes or no? Yes. try to understand. Yeah, here whenever client requests, then only server has to respond, give response according to the request received. So what is who will initiate the process? Who will initiate? Client has to initiate the process, then server will respond to it. Okay, that is a client server architecture or paradigm, we can say. Next, coming to this peer-to-peer network. Peer-to-peer network in the sense, whatever the client role, server role we have defined earlier in the client server paradigm, such kind of roles will not be present in peer-to-peer. That means every system can receive the request from other system. Next, every system can respond to the request it received. So there won't be any distinction like client. This is a client system. This is a server system. Like that, we will not be having any distinction. Okay, any specified role. Every system can act as a client. Every system can act as server as well. So that is what peer-to-peer network means. Okay, so here now you see one process. The server plays the role of the service provider. So server is the service provider in a client server paradigm, waiting passively for the arrival of requests. Until it receives the request, it has to wait. Other process called client issues specific request to the server. Okay, and awaits until it gets the response from the server. Okay, in this client server paradigm,
Sir, we can't see your screen.
yes,
I can't see your screen, sir. Hello. Like, are you sharing screen, sir?
yeah, no,
It's not visible.
No, sir. No, sir, it's not visible.
oh wait. Then what? Why you didn't ask until this time? Sorry,
Because
sir.
you were just explaining the doubt, sir. Yesterday,
Okay. Thank you, ma. At least we haven't wasted much time. Okay. This was the previous class. Here you see elements of parallel computing. In this, we have seen data parallelism, task parallelism. Yeah. This point clear, right? Speed up is more as there is only one execution thread operating on all sets of data. Here, multiple threads will be created, different thread for each and every data set. Yes. Next, we have discussed about the Flynn's classification. In this instruction stream, data stream we have discussed, and accordingly we have divided into 4 different architectures: SISD, SIMD, MISD, MIMD. Okay, this is about the previous class. Next, coming to today's one, that is elements of distributed computing. In this, we will be discussing about like architecture and models related to computational models related to distributed computing. Now, this is the well-known thing, that is message passing paradigm. In this process will be communicated, or inter-process communication will be done based on exchanging the messages. Okay, this is what we have seen related to message passing paradigm. Next, coming to client server. Here we have discussed one important point one needs to know here is client server paradigm consists of 2 kinds of systems. One is client, another one is server. Okay, every task will be initiated by the client. Client has to request the server for some particular resource, or that resource can be some device, or we can say some data. Such kind of request client will give to the server. Then server will act upon it and responds to the client. Okay, now you see these points. One process, the server plays the role of the service provider. So server will act as the service provider, and it will be waiting for the request until it gets the request. It has to wait passively. That is what here mentioned, waiting passively for the arrival of request. Other process is called client. Okay, what it will do, it will issues the request to the server and awaits the server's response. Until it gets the response from the server, it has to wait. That is what client server paradigm. So what is the initiator of the process? Client here. Understand? In client server paradigm, client is the initiator of the process. Whereas in peer-to-peer paradigm, what is the role of one particular system? The role can be a client or a server. That means it can act as a service provider, or at the same time it can request for service as well to the other systems. Understand? So peer-to-peer network, in the sense every system can act as a server and client. So peer-to-peer paradigm, the participating process play equal roles with equivalent capabilities and responsibilities. Everyone, it's like in your class 60 people are having, all 60 will be having same kind of vertical what we can say independence. Like you can select any of the subjects to read at any time. You can able to spend time for enriching your knowledge. Like this, everyone will be having same kind of freedom. Okay, in the same way here also, peer-to-peer network, in the sense every system can act as a client and server. Each participant may issue a request to another participant and receive a response. This is about peer-to-peer network. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Next one is remote procedure, remote method. In this particular one, what how inter-process communication will be done is, a caller or the client will give the request and it will go to client stub. Then it will be converted to RPC call by using RPC protocol. That call will be received by RPC protocol. Then it will be given to the server stub. Then finally it will reach to the server, where the process will the request will be processed and it will give the return value, then reply, then it will come back to the client. This is what the cycle. In this particular one, what we need to understand here is how it is different from client server architecture. Yes or no? Here also we are having client, here also we are having server. So how it is different is, whatever the request or request made by the client, that will be taken by client stub. What is client stub? Is a small set of program, we can say. Client stub is nothing but a small set of program. It is not entire inter-process communication algorithm. It is just a small set of program. What it will do is, it will change that request, whatever the client request it received, to the specified format, and by using RPC protocol, that particular call will be transferred to the server. In the server, again that RPC protocol will be there in order to understand what the RPC call made. Okay, from that call it will receive, it will extract the information and it will give it to the server stub. Again, it is a small set of programs. Okay, what you call, we can say, part of the entire program. Then it will give that request to the server. Server will execute as usual and will return. Again, that response has to be converted to RPC response. Remote procedure call, RPC in the sense remote procedure call. So while sending from client to the server, RPC protocol, what it will do is, RPC call request it will make. Okay, in specified format, some request has to be made, so that on the other system where we are executing this, where we are using this RPC protocol, there we will be able to understand how many arguments we are having, what is the first argument, what is the second argument, like this, what is the what you call order of the argument. These all things will be can be understood by the server correctly if you use same protocol at both the ends. Next, finally, while giving the response also, again at server side, server stuff will give the reply in the form of RPC response call. Then it will receive it, client will receive it, then finally it will reach to the client. This is about remote procedure. Here you see remote procedure call involves two independent processes which may reside on separate machines. This is one system, this is another system. Process A wishing to make a request to another process B issues a procedure call. Procedure call to B. What kind of procedure call? Remote procedure call. Passing with the call a list of argument values. A remote procedure call triggers a predefined action in procedure provided by process B. At the completion of the procedure, process B returns a value to process A. Okay, RPC allows programmers to build a network application using a programming construct similar to the local procedure call. Okay, this will give our the programmer that like some sort of flexibility we can able to achieve by using this RPC protocol, that as a normal system how we will be making a function call, like that only we could able to make we could able to request for the resource from client to server as well. Understand my point? Just with this point you can able to relate what is entire thing. I am repeating once again. RPC protocol, by using RPC protocol, we are requesting for the resource in the server. Now, what is the advantage of this RPC protocol is, it's like suppose if you are writing a program to perform addition of 5 numbers, you have defined one function called add. Add is the function which will take 5 parameters, 5 arguments. Then whenever you make a function call to it, then it will take care of arguments and it will return the result. So how much flexibility we will be feeling when we have local function within our program itself. Such kind of flexibility will be provided even though the resource is available in the server by using RPC protocol. So such kind of flexibility how we are achieving? By using RPC protocol. That is only will take care of all the things. Just we have to give parameter or the argument values, so that it will convert that local call into RPC call. Then on the other side also, that by using RPC protocol it will take care of how that request can be processed and how the response has to be framed, and after receiving at the client side also, by using RPC protocol only, that will be decoded and will be given to the client in specified or the required format. Okay, this is about remote procedure, or we can say RPC protocol. That's it. Got it? Yes. Next, here another one is called network service object request broker. This we have seen in the case while discussing about middleware thing, right? Middleware thing. Whatever the client applications that we are having, or some process we are having, okay, these process require some resource which is available in other process. Then what it will do is it will give the request to the object request broker. Okay, we can say ORB, object request broker. All the clients will request will give the their request to the ORB. Then from this ORB, it will this ORB, this middleware thing, will take care of redirecting those requests to corresponding objects in the particular server or other systems where that particular request can be processed. So there is a middleware thing called ORB, object request broker. So here a process issues request to an appropriate object that provides the desired service. Paradigm closely resembles remote method invocation, RMI model, in its support for remote objects. Mobile agent is a transportable program. What is meant by mobile agent is transportable program or object. It is an agent is launched from an originating host. The agent then travels autonomously from host to host according to an itinerary of that it carries. The paradigm offers the abstraction for a transportable program or object. Here, the thing is, suppose if you have one particular resource which is available at one system that can be requested through this one, then what it will do is it will redirect to corresponding process system where that request can be processed. But now one additional thing is being incorporated here, that is mobile agent. What this mobile agent is? Transportable program or object. What does it mean is that program can reside in one particular system, and according to the need that can be moved to another system where yes, this is a transportable one, so that can be shifted to some other program. These all things will be taken care by object request broker. I'm repeating and try to understand. I'm repeating once again. Suppose client requires one particular object as the resource. Okay, one particular resource required by the client. Then what it will do is, instead of requesting for that system directly, it will communicate through this ORB. What is the need of having this ORB internal vertically intermediately? Is whenever we move that particular resource to some other system depending upon the need, then it will keep track of that particular movement. That is what ORB will do. Understand my point? Whenever it requests one particular resource, then ORB will take care of that particular request, and it will redirect to corresponding system where that mobile agent is available right now, and it will get the response and give it to the requested client. This is what ORB will do. This is object request broker. Got it? Is the point clear, ma'am?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So these are the several vertical architectures we have seen, and one more thing is like object space. In this object space, like we are having two different types of object space. One is when we have whiteboard, which is also see the right side part of the diagram. Here we are having 4 hosts. One whiteboard is there. Whatever the information host 1 wants to share, okay, that will be kept in whiteboard. Similarly, host 4, host 3, host 2, like these all hosts, whatever the information or the resource wants to share by other to the other host, that entire thing will be kept open in whiteboard. Okay, it's like suppose you are preparing for exam. Okay, suppose if you wanted to give some information to your friends, you will keep that entire information in the WhatsApp group. Other person who wants to give some other information, added information, that can be given in the WhatsApp group. So entirely that information can be accessed by any of the system, any of the friends in that particular group, right? Similarly, here also whiteboard based group where paradigm here is, whatever the information host 1 wants to share, that will be kept in the whiteboard. That is a shared memory, we can say. Okay, whiteboard kind of thing called shared memory, where resources can be shared. Now another one is message based group where paradigm. That means what suppose host 1 wants to get some information from host 3, then it will request, then get response host 2. Similarly, other systems. So there will be individual messages, independent messages that will be taken care, that will be used to perform some group activity. Here there is a common area where we can able to get the information which we require if it is available. Okay, like these 2 types of collaborative application paradigms we have, message-based groupware paradigm, whiteboard-based groupware paradigm. In this first one, host can multicast. What is meant by multicasting? Yes. What is meant by multicasting? No? What is meant by broadcasting? Yes.
Every single node in a network getting a resource, like ejecting in
Yeah,
linear.
broadcasting in the sense giving the message to all systems which are available in the, which are present in the network. Yeah. What is meant by multicasting? The name itself indicating multicasting in the sense, suppose we are having in the network 60 systems are there. Now if I wanted to send a message to all the systems, okay, all the systems, then that we require to perform broadcasting. Whereas if you wanted to send a message to some 20 people, then it is some part of the network, right? Okay, some subset of the network we wanted to send message. Such kind of thing we call it as multicasting. Got it? Multicasting in the sense some subset of for some set of subset of nodes we are sending the message. Okay, and in broader sense, what we can say is multicasting can be generalized as broadcasting also. Why? Because some subset, if that some subset becomes entire set, that will be equivalent to broadcasting. Got it?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So here a host can multicast to send data to all hosts in the group. Here one group we are establishing within a network. Of course, a network we are having, within that one group is there. To that group we can send. Such kind of thing we call it as multicasting. Part of the host in the group. Okay, this is nothing but message-based groupware paradigm. Another one is whiteboard-based. Information is available on the public board in the group. Whoever in the group can access it. Okay, anyone can read or write data to a shared display. This is whiteboard-based groupware paradigm. So in this particular one, we have seen how data sharing can be, data exchanging can be done. That is inter-process communication. Now, just 1 minute recap. See, we have started with the message passing, then client server or peer-to-peer paradigm, then remote procedure call paradigm, then object request broker, then object space. So if you put all together, it will be like a distributed application paradigm. In this particular one, message passing, whatever the thing required, that can be. So these all are the paradigms related to distributed applications. The amount of abstraction, if you consider, it will be from high to low. That means whatever the request or whatever the resource needed by one particular system, that can be processed in the message passing or client server. In this, all these paradigms, the same thing will be happened. Try to understand my point. In every paradigm, objective is same. Objective is what? If one system requires or one node requires one resource, or the one resource, let us consider, then that has to be processed by some other system which is available in the distributed system. This is what entirely. That can be done in several ways. One is message passing, and that is by exchanging the messages, it could able to get the required thing, or by using client server or peer-to-peer networks, or by using remote procedure calls, or by using object request broker, or by using collaborative application. Like this, we are having several paradigms in order to achieve the same task. Out of these all, if you consider abstraction level, client should not know, client who is requesting for the resource should not know how that particular request is being processed. Okay, when you consider this abstraction level, that abstraction level is more in last one, that is object space. It's like I will go to the previous one. Just you consider in this particular whiteboard based group, client requires one particular client requires, suppose host 3 requires one resource which is available with host 1. I'm repeating once again, host 3 requires a resource from host 1. In general, how this whiteboard based groupware paradigm will work is, host 1 wants to share that resource, in the sense that will be kept in whiteboard, isn't it? Host 1 will keep all the resources which it wants to share will be kept in whiteboard. So host 3 just it will come here and it will take the resource. That's it. Host 3 doesn't need to know from where it is going to access. Just it will search in the whiteboard. If it is available, it will take it. Similarly, host 4 wants to utilize the same thing, then it will go to whiteboard and it will take that resource and utilize it. That's it. So host 1, although the resource is held by host 1, it is immaterial to host 3 and host 4 because of this abstraction. So high level of abstraction is being offered by this object space, isn't it? Understand my point?
Yes.
Yeah. Just on contrast, just you consider the same procedure, same thing we have to achieve by using message passing. How message passing will be done? Whenever one process, one host requires one resource, then it will request. It will request another host. If it is available, it will take it. Next, if it is not available, then it has to go to another one. And if it is available, it will take it. Like that, message passing will take more time. And of course, one more thing is, host will know from where it is accessing, how the resource, from where it is getting the resource and all. That is low level of abstraction, isn't it? Just you consider the first one and last one, then you will come to know how that abstraction takes place. Yes, can you able to find the difference? Shall I explain once?
No, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. See, in object space, one resource is held here, is kept here, in the sense any host can utilize, irrespective of from where that resource is being shared, that can be utilized by any host. So very high level of abstraction we are able to achieve in object space. Whereas in message passing, what will happen? It has to request individual hosts independently, and whenever it gets the response, then it will utilize. That means abstraction level is very, very low. Understand? That is what we are trying to analyze here by using this diagram. High to low, in the sense object space abstraction level is high, message passing abstraction level is low. That is from where resources are being utilized. All these things can be known by every host while utilizing it in the message passing, whenever we use message passing paradigm. Whereas in object space, that abstraction we could able to achieve. So this is about distributed application paradigms. Next, another one is like computing models. This is quite a generalized topic. Distributed computing models. Coming to the classification, we are having mini computer, workstation server, processor pool, then hybrid. These are the 5 different models we are having in the classification. What are all these? Why we need to have these all is nothing but ultimately we have to establish one particular model where we could able to perform distributed computing. I'm repeating once again. If you understand the intuition behind it, then remaining what you call concept you can understand clearly, correctly. That's what. See, ultimately, what is our goal? In order to establish a model where we can able to perform distributed computing. Okay. To do this one, we are having several alternatives. One is mini computer model, another one is workstation server, processor pool, and finally the hybrid model. So we will be seeing one after the another how these models can be utilized to perform distributed computing. This is what our entire thing. Got it? Got the intuition why we are having this classification? Yes?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Now, this is a mini computer model. Just what this will do is, it is an extension to centralized time sharing system. What is meant by time sharing system? Just by seeing the term, we try to guess what is time sharing system.
Global clock. Sure.
Global clock. Okay. Next. You have completed the subject called operating systems, right? Yes, operating systems.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, in that you are having one scheduling algorithm called round robin scheduling,
Yes,
right?
sir. Yes.
How it will work? You please try to explain.
We'll actually maintain quantum, sir, and the
Yeah.
processes that visits will take it into the ready queue,
No.
and basing on the quantum number, we'll allocate the resource till that second. If it exceeds, then the next thing in the queue will be processed.
Yeah. So what is the resource there?
Resource can be anything, sir. Input output devices, or maybe memory.
That is round robin scheduling algorithm. Scheduling algorithm in the
We'll
sense
just schedule the
CPU
process
schedule.
there, sir.
Huh? Yes.
We'll be scheduling only the processes there, sir.
Yeah, processor. Okay, the resource is processor. Understand? Their resource is processor itself, CPU scheduling algorithm, that one. So now, if you consider one quantum, or we can say time slice, one time slice will be fixed. That time, up to that time slice, we will be allotting for one process. After that, we will be allocating, we will be giving the chance to another process which is in the queue. Like that, we will be continuing. After completing all the process in the ready queue, again the same cycle will be repeated by giving the same amount of time slice. Like this we will be repeating. So that is time sharing system. Here in this mini computer also, whatever the task it has to be done. Okay, these tasks for every mini computer there will be some terminals. Through these, multiple users can connect simultaneously. That is only one system will be having. That system can be utilized by multiple people, but not at the same time. That you remember. But not at the same time. Simultaneously, they will be logging and log out. Like that, we'll be having mini computer. Now, each mini computer usually has multiple users simultaneously logged onto it. Yeah. Several interactive terminals are connected to each mini computer. These are the interactive terminals. Next, network allows users to access remote resources. Like if we have a resource here, then it could able to communicate. It could able to get it from this communication network. Mini computer model may be used when resource sharing with remote users is desired. Of course, early ARPANET, you know this term, right? ARPANET.
No, sir.
You don't know?
No, sir.
Okay, this actually this is the basis of internet. How internet is evolved earlier is there is a research group in US, where some group of researchers were working on one particular thing. They wanted to exchange their thoughts, their ideas, their methodology, and everything instantaneously. Okay, so they wanted to create some sort of medium where they could able to share all the information. There is a set of researchers who are working on some particular project. Okay, they wanted to exchange ideas. For that purpose, there was no internet at that time. Then they tried to establish one sort of communication medium where they could able to share or put common data. Okay, such kind of thing they have named it as ARPANET, ARPANET, Advanced Research Project Association Network, something. Advanced Research Project Association, I think. Yeah, that is the basis of actual internet. How the internet has developed. The seed is ARPANET. After this ARPANET only, they have extended that to all over places. Then it has become internet. Okay, that entire thing is based on ARPANET. This ARPANET is an example of distributed computing based computing system based, and it is based on mini computer model actually. That means some, it's like you assume these as different researchers. Okay, these all are researchers. Okay, scientists we are having. The some set of scientists will use one computer like this, other set will use some other system like this. We are having several mini computers. These all will be communicated by using one computer communication network. One communication network. This is the model of ARPANET based on this mini computer model. Got it? Actually, this is a very initial stage of internet. Even that internet term was also not not given before this ARPANET. Understand?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
Next, this workstation model. What this workstation will do? Here, this is as I have told you, I have mentioned you here. These all are independent approaches where we could able to establish the model to perform distributed computing. So mini computer model you have understood. Next, coming to workstation model. Here, workstation model in the sense, it no need to depends upon another computer or another like mini computer. Every time it will be having its own resources locally. Workstation in the sense, it is a little extension to the normal PC. Understand? Workstation is nothing but there will be some sort of more resources will be available local to it. That is workstation. Yeah. Here you see a distributed computing system based on the workstation model consists of several workstations interconnected by the communication network. The idle time of some portion of workstation is very high. Idle time in the sense workstations will be having several resources. All resources cannot be needed all the time. So idle time will be present. So now workstation model, how it will work is by interconnecting those all workstation together by using high-speed LAN. Idle workstation may be used to process jobs of users. Other workstation users can utilize the resources which are available here. That is what the main idea of workstation model. Although some resources are available internally to this particular workstation, some resources which are required by this additional to this can be utilized or can be requested from other workstations. That is what workstation model. And by using this also, we could able to achieve distributed computing. Got it? Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes. No.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah, it's time. So what you do today is for attendance, you please enter your roll number according to the roll numbers, not in random order. Just you enter starting from now. Okay, attendance. Yeah, now you please enter your roll number starting from. Don't send randomly. If you don't know the numbers, I will take one class to teach numbers 1, 2, 3 like that. Don't send randomly. I'm saying repeatedly. See the sequence here. 2, 3, 7, 19, 1,002, 1,003, 1,007, 1,0019, 1,0021. Like that you have to enter. Yeah, 2, next 3, 7,